Good morning. Welcome to class 9 of Developmental Psychology, NDSU Psych 250, summer semester 2017. And today's picture is the amazing Sterling Archer from the animated series Archer. You should watch it if you haven't. It's a spy thriller. Um, Incredibly inappropriate. Just spoiler alert, don't watch it with your kids. Um, but it takes place. Well, I don't really know when it takes place. It's sort of like Cold War era, but they have modern technology. I don't think it's supposed to make sense, but you should watch it. It's really good. It's on Netflix. And speaking of Netflix, so every time I see one of those articles on Facebook, what's coming and going from Netflix this month, I look at it. And guess what? Futurama is being taken off of Netflix. How in the hell am I supposed to survive? I love Futurama. I use Futurama references all the time. I have Futurama memes that I use for this class. Like, I am so devastated. So if you have not finished Futurama or you love it, you've got until July to watch it. I want to say July 12th is when it's going off, but don't take my word for it. Like, just watch it. I'm gonna binge watch until July so that I can watch it again. I'm so sad. I just watched it last semester, but I'm gonna rewatch it. Um, but I love this meme from Archer because Archer is a very dysfunctional person with like a very grating personality and a lot of interpersonal issues, and a lot of it stems from the dysfunctional relationship that he has with his mom. And I just like this. I'm a product of my upbringing because we really are affected by our emotional personality. I'm playing with my little thing during early childhood. And so today we are talking about social and personality development in early childhood. And I just wanted to also say, in the syllabus it says on Monday we're talking about gender and moral development. And I forgot that last semester I decided to combine moral development with social and personality development. So, just FYI, we will be talking about moral development today, and then Monday we'll just be talking about gender development. So, just putting that out there. And Monday's class, I think, is going to be really good. It's a topic that I know a lot about. I'm transgender. I think I've talked about that before. Our next class will be a combination of talking about the scientific foundations for gender identity, as well as the outcomes that we can expect across the lifespan if gender identity is not validated. And then also I'll kind of talk a little bit about my own experience. So it'll be a really fun class. You won't want to miss it. Now, we're going to start off with our discussion, and does not mean that you can just blow the rest of class off and just, I got the discussion question. There is a video that you need to watch that is attached to the module today. It's a YouTube video, and the reason I'm not giving you the link here is because it's of a 3-year-old who came to my class in the spring, and his mom has given me permission to load that video to YouTube to share for instructional purposes. However, just because I'm cognizant of his age and of security issues, that is a private link. You can only access the video if you have the link. And so I've posted the link to our Blackboard page so that you can just click it so that it's not out there for everyone to see. And I would like for you to watch that video by Monday, and then on Monday I'm going to take the video down. So just be aware that I'm going to send out an email too so that you know, but you should, before you do anything else today, you should watch that video. So even before you finish class, you should watch that video. Because it'll help build upon what we talked about last time. Also, because you have to watch that video, this class will be a little bit shorter. The video is 15 minutes. I'm going to try to end class after about 50 minutes to an hour, so that you don't have to spend more than the 80 minutes for class on classwork. Now, what I want you to do for your discussion for Class 9 is write down if you see our visitor do any of the following. So overregularization, errors of conservation, sociodramatic play, episodic memory, or centration. And then write a 2 to 3 sentence report and reflection on the video. So write about what you noticed, and then just kind of your general reflections about what it's like to interact with a 3-year-old. Now, maybe you have children and you've interacted with many 3-year-olds, so this isn't going to be a new experience for you. But this was a really fun. I enjoy. This is the kid that I nanny on the weekends, so I really enjoy him. He's a lot of fun. So so I hope you enjoyed that video and you do this discussion. So I'll give you a second to jot that down, and then obviously if you want to stop this video and watch the other one, you can, and then come back to it. That's fine too. I think it would make more sense if you watched it first, and that's how we did it in the spring. Is the video the kid came in before I did this lecture, so I'll let you write this down. Oh God. So I'm scrolling through Facebook and my friend posted this thing about finding spiders in their guest room. And somebody posted a gif of a tarantula. I do not like spiders. Like I have a legitimate psychological disorder, psychological phobia of spiders. Okay. Oh, I think I'm gonna throw up. That was disgusting. All right. Please do not post gifs of spiders or pictures of spiders on social media without a trigger warning. Thank you. Oh God, that was disgusting. All right, let's move on. Just as an aside, last semester in class, some person in the front row was like rubbing their foot up back and forth on uh, the uh, the floor, and I thought there was a spider, and I freaked out. Like they thought it was hilarious, but I did not think it was hilarious. It scared me. I do not like spiders at all. They are disgusting, vile. They are the devil's minions. That is my opinion. Not scientific at all. I do not like spiders. They're just not the thing. And I'm from a state where the cockroaches are this big, like the size of like from here to here. And so like that's saying a lot when I can deal with a palmetto bug or a cockroach, but I can't deal with a spider. Ugh, Jesus. Let's move on. Let's move on from spiders. Gross. During early childhood, Erickson proposes that we are in the stage of initiative versus guilt. And what Erickson proposes is that children have a strong sense of purpose or initiative. So at this age, we all have this goal, this thing that we want to do, this drive. Initiative is like a goal or a drive. And children are eager to learn new things. They are always up for a new adventure, and they love to play with friends and caregivers because play is the way that children are able to explore themselves and explore the world that they live in. However, children have also developed by this point a strong sense of right and wrong, and we'll talk at the end of class about how that development occurs. And this is the guilt part of the initiative versus guilt. Within this sense of right and wrong, children start to develop and learn, not develop, but learn sociocultural rules and a moral code. So we all in our individual cultures have different rules that are often unspoken, and a moral code that we follow. And in the South, for example, one of our sociocultural rules is that if you're a man or identify as a man, then you're supposed to hold the door open for women and for elderly people. and that's drilled into you. And it doesn't matter the gender of the elderly person. Anyone who's older than you, if you're younger, you're supposed to hold the door open, and then also if the person's a woman of any age, even if they're younger than you. And so that's something that's so drilled into me that even though I identify as a woman now and live as a woman, I still open the door for other women and for people who are older than me because it's just something that was drilled into me at a young age. Um, and because we've developed at this stage a set of sociocultural rules and a moral code, we feel guilty if we do something we believe is wrong. And so, for example, if you know you're 7 years old and you don't hold the door open for an elderly person in your church, you might feel really guilty, like you've done something wrong. The reality is, it's just a social rule. It's not a hard and fast ethical rule. It doesn't matter if you hold the door open. And honestly, I can say as someone who now identifies as a woman, it doesn't really. I don't care one way or the other if someone doesn't hold the door open for me. Now, if somebody's in front of me and they just shut the door in my face, like that does irritate me because it's like, how hard is it to like, reach behind you and keep the door open for the next person to grab onto it? Like, it's not hard at all. Um, but like it's not like nobody really cares. It's not like you're hurting anyone. With this within this framework of having an initiative, having a goal, or a drive, and having this sense of right and wrong, we start to develop what's called our self or to develop what's called self-understanding. And self-understanding is comprised of two very similar concepts, or constructs. The first is self-concept, and this is a set of attributes or abilities or attitudes or values that an individual believes defines who they are. So, for example, my self concept, I feel that I'm the kind of person who's very compassionate, driven to help other people. I'm very good at what I do. I'm a very good speaker, good teacher, good helper. Um, and one of the things that I value above all else is loving people as they come. So not trying to make people into something that they're not trying to force people into fitting my own personal sense of what is ethical or what is moral or what is right. Just accepting and loving people as they are and understanding that everyone's journey is a little different. That is my self concept. And each of you may have different self concepts. Each of you may feel that you are defined by very different sets of words or very different sets of concepts. In early childhood, though, our self concept is very defined by our actions and possessions. So a small child will say something like, when you ask them who they are, well, I have a fire truck, or I like to go to the park. Um, though they're not so much defined by more abstract ideas like altruism or self-sacrifice. It's more of this is what I do, this is what I have, and I'm very proud of that, and that defines who I am. They also Small children use emotions and attitudes to describe their self-concept. So um, I really like going to the park. I'm happy when I go to the park. And then connecting motives and feelings. So again, um, I like to play with my fire truck because it makes me feel happy. Um, Self-esteem is also part of self-understanding, and self-esteem is our judgment that we make about our own worth. So I feel like I have a pretty healthy self-esteem. I know I know who I am, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at, and I'm okay with that. You know, it's like I'm still working on becoming a better person. So is everyone else. Um, for children, it's incredibly high. It's like almost too high. Um, in my opinion, and I think science would back me up here, a good self-esteem, a healthy self-esteem is a good balance of being realistic about who you are and just being okay with the fact that you're still improving. Children, though, have a very high self-esteem and they think, oh, I'm the best at everything. I'm perfect. I am the end all be all of human beings. I am God's gift to the world. And that's, it's a good thing because small children are incredibly incompetent at everything that they do. And so, if you had a realistic self esteem as a young child, you may not ever develop and grow and become better at things because you're not willing to try anything new because your self esteem is so shot. Um, So it's good for small children to have high self-esteem. The problem is, though, high self-esteem is very easily undermined. Realistic self-esteem is not, because you know that you're deficient. But when you have a really high self-esteem, it can be undermined because you don't really have a realistic perception of who you are. And it can be undermined by harsh parenting. So when you have parents who are very harsh, who put you down, who point out your faults, this can really undermine your self-esteem, and it can put you on a really bad developmental path socially and emotionally. As we move, so we talked about emotions in newborns and infants, and as we grow older and we get towards middle childhood and we advance through this early stage of childhood, we experience a very sophisticated emotional development, and children during this period increase in their emotional competence. Um, for example, they can deduce the cause of emotional responses. They can see someone sad and they can figure out from context clues why that person's sad. They also can predict behavior based on displayed emotions. So if they see someone and they're like, then they're going to be able to say, deduce or think, well, that person's probably going to yell at me if I try to like talk to them or get on their nerves. Um, However, it's their emotional competence is still not sophisticated enough to navigate kind of conflicting cues. So if you have someone who's like really frustrated and really angry looking, and then they start laughing, they're gonna have trouble figuring it out. Um, like, why is this person um, this person seems upset, but now they're acting happy. And as adults, we know that people can be in a bad place. They can be upset. They can be grumpy, but they can still react in socially appropriate ways. They can still. We understand as adults that emotions can be complicated. That I can be upset, but still also laugh and enjoy a joke, or still show love or friendship or compassion towards another person, even if I'm upset. But in early childhood, our emotional development isn't sophisticated enough to be able to parse apart the complexity of emotions. We also start to see during this period much more self-directed emotional self-regulation, which I guess sort of sort of sounds like an oxymoron. Um, Self-directed self-regulation. And the reason I make that distinction is that newborns and infants can self-regulate, but it often requires help of an outside person. Um, Small children in early childhood can actually initiate self-regulation on their own. They can verbalize strategies to reduce arousal. So, for example, if a child gets upset, they can go to their mom and say, "I need a hug," or "I need comfort." Um, Whereas an infant may be crying, and you may have to, as a parent, go and say, "Do you need a hug?" And it's like, "Yeah, I do." And like it's self-regulating because the hug is calming you down. You are in the there is some kind of self component to it, but the difference is in early childhood you're able to initiate what you need. You're able to specify what you need. However, our temperament, so we talked about that, the easy temperament, the difficult temperament, etc., can really affect how we self-regulate. So people who are easily temperamental or have an easy temperament are much better at emotional self-regulation than someone who's difficult temperament. They're not necessarily as um, um, efficient or as good at self-regulation. However, even though we have this more sophisticated emotional competence, we have emotional regulation or self regulation in early childhood, it's still really hard. And I've attached this video here for you to watch. It's fun. But this is a replication of an experiment that was done in social psychology that looks at children's ability to delay gratification, to regulate their wants, their needs, to regulate emotion. And what the experimenter did, and I can't remember his name, let me look it up. You've probably seen this. Walter Mischel. You've probably seen this before in your intro class or if you took another psychology class. It's pretty famous, but it's the Stanford marshmallow experiment. It was done by Walter Mischel in the 60s and 70s. And what he did is he had a bunch of kids come in and he gave them a marshmallow and said, if you can wait for a certain amount of time and you don't eat the marshmallow, then you will get 2 marshmallows. Most kids he found could not wait for the second marshmallow. They ate the first one because it's very hard to delay gratification of emotion and of arousal when you are a little tiny kid. So watch this video. It's hilarious. Personally, I hate marshmallows. I do not think that it would be an issue for me to wait for 2 marshmallows. I'd probably throw them both away anyway. Now, if it was like it was a hot day and somebody put one of these mugs in front of me and was like, if you wait you can have 2, I would have trouble. The same with a donut or oh my god, Arby's French fries. Is there nothing in the world better than an Arby's French fry? Oh my god, I'm gonna get Arby's when I go home for lunch. The big curly fry tub. You get some honey mustard to dip that mug in. I don't think I could sit there for 6 minutes and wait for another container of curly fried. I think I would just go, especially when you add some beef and cheddar up in that mug. Girl, oh, that's what I'm having for lunch today. Ugh, gonna gain some weight. We also start to see much more prevalent than in newborns and infants self-conscious emotions. So things like guilt and shame. And we talked about this a couple classes ago, but guilt is very healthy. Guilt means that we recognize that we have transgressed some kind of ethical or moral boundary that we've set for ourselves. Shame is not healthy. Shame is the feeling, it's like guilt, but it's the feeling that we are not worthy, that we are not good enough. And that is not healthy because that denies the entire idea that as human beings, we're not ever going to be perfect, that we're always working towards becoming better. And so it's okay if you do something wrong to feel guilty, but it's not okay to to have shame or to be ashamed of yourself. Because that is the idea, and you should never tell someone that they should be ashamed of themselves. You could say you should feel bad or you should feel guilty because of what you did. It was not okay. But you shouldn't make someone feel like they're not good enough or they're not worthy enough because that's not the case. Everyone is good enough. You're good enough. Even if you don't feel like it, you still are because we're all still developing. Development does not end until we're dead. So you have every excuse in the world not to be perfect because you're not dead yet. So you're still growing, you're still developing. Empathy. Now we've talked a lot about or we not a lot, but we talked a little bit about empathy and we talked about mirror neurons and how mirror neurons are these clusters of neural connections in our brain. And when we talked about neurons, I drew you a little really horrible picture. Um, but these mirror neurons are clusters of neurons which, when we watch somebody else's experience, we watch their actions, those neurons in our brain activate. They release neurotransmitters. They fire, so to speak, and our brain actually replicates what we're seeing. We don't do it, but it replicates it. So when I do this, the mirror neurons in your brain are replicating all of the actions it would take for your brain to make your arm go up and down like this. Empathy is sort of a similar, it's not sort of, it is very similar to that. Empathy is our prosocial or altruistic behaviors that benefit another person without expected reward for oneself. And it's a combination of that and sympathy, so feelings of sorrow or concern for another. So empathy then is looking at another person's pain and feeling that pain and wanting to do something to alleviate it. That doesn't mean that you always will do something, but it means that you feel the urge to because you yourself are being personally affected by it. And it happens through the use of these mirror neurons. So you see someone who's in pain, you feel that pain personally, and you're motivated to do something to benefit them. not that it's going to do anything for you. I mean, it'll relieve your own individual emotional pain, but it's not about you. That's the difference. Sympathy is just feeling bad for somebody else. And if you feel bad for somebody else and you want to do something to fix it, like that's empathy. That's the difference. Um, excuse me. Um, Temperament, though, in early childhood really determines on whether or not you become an empathic or an empathetic person. So people who are very good at emotion regulation are empathetic, tend to be empathetic. Because, sorry, because part of being empathetic is being able to look beyond your own reaction and think about the other person and how they're feeling. So that, in other words, people, or on the other side, people with bad emotion regulation, so people who dysregulate very easily, get distressed and focus on their own emotions and they stop thinking about the other person, so they're not as empathetic. This is where parents come in. Parents really do have an impact on whether or not their children are empathetic or not. So people who are warm in their parenting styles produce empathetic children. Because warm parenting is empathetic. It involves considering the feelings of your child. It's helping your child explore those feelings. On the other hand, harsh parenting produces insensitive children. Again, that makes sense. Harsh parenting is incredibly insensitive. It puts down the individual. It makes them feel bad about who they are and about how they are living their life and how they're trying to understand and navigate sort of the complexities of growing up. And so when you have constant put downs, that puts all the reflection inward on that person. When we feel good about ourselves, we tend to think about other people because we're not as concerned about our own needs. And honestly, I'm not trying to make people feel bad if they're not empathetic. If you're not empathetic, it may be that you're not, it's probably good that you're not because you need all of your emotional attention to focus on yourself. People who are empathetic tend to have good emotion regulation. They have social support. They don't need to focus all of their emotional energy on their own their own needs. So it's not necessarily that not being empathetic is bad. It just just means that you have different sets of needs. Peer relationships in early childhood are incredibly important, and later in the semester, so after midterm, we'll talk about peer relationships in more detail, and this is an area that I research and I'm very interested in. But in early childhood, friends are incredibly important. And they're important in many different ways. They provide reinforcement. So when you watch children, small children play, one of them does something correctly, the other one will be like, "Oh, very good, I like that," or something like that. You know what I mean? Where they're saying, they're being encouraging as you play. And that positive reinforcement builds self competence, builds self esteem. Companionship is also important. And companionship is important because we need to interact with people in our own age. Because when we interact with people of our own age, we're able to practice social interactions in a low risk environment. If both you and your friend are not particularly competent at social interactions, you're not going to feel as bad if you mess up. Whereas it's a high risk when you're talking to someone who's more emotionally competent than yourself, because if you mess up, you're going to feel stupid. The same kind of goes as an example, like if you're talking to me, you're trying to explain your idea for a paper or a project to me. You may feel really insecure about talking to me about it because I know more than you do, and you don't want me to think that you're stupid. That's a high risk interaction. I won't think you're stupid, by the way. I totally get it. This is a 200 level class. You're not supposed to get it. I'm here to help you. So don't feel guilty about that or scared about that. But you could talk to your classmate and you probably don't feel as intimidated or as scared to talk to your classmate because it's a low risk interaction. You're not, you don't have as much to lose. Excuse me. And then also, because of the reinforcement, because of the interactions in a low risk environment or low risk interactions, this lays the foundation for our adult relationships as a practice. It's a small miniature practice for how we will interact with people as adults. And people who have bad relationships as adults probably didn't have good relationships as children. It's not a hard and fast rule. You can have a horrible childhood and grow up to be a very well adjusted, perfectly normal, perfectly happy adult. Um, and vice versa. You can have a great childhood and then grow up and be a horrible adult. But for the most part, though, you can pretty much expect if you don't have good relationships as a child, you're probably not going to have good relationships as an adult. Now, our peer relationships develop in three different steps. The first is non-social play, and this is the very first stage. And if you have a small child, it's almost fun. When I took this class as an undergrad, when I was in your place, my baby sister Piper was just born. She was like a year old, 2 years old, 2 years old. And so I was able to watch, for part of this class, I was able to watch her grow up, and it was really fascinating to be able to see what I was learning in my class being played out by her. Now she's 6, so these set of lectures are really pertinent to her development right now, and it's going to be fun because as I teach this class again and again, she's going to be getting older and older, so I'm going to be able to watch her grow in a really interesting way. Um, but if you have a child, so I say all that to say, if you have a child, you should be hopefully watching them in context of what we're talking about in class because it'll really give you I think, a richer experience in this class. But if you have a child or you've been around children, you've probably seen non-social play. And this is sort of an onlooker or solitary play. And it has its earliest forms when the child is like an infant or a newborn. And you've all seen this. You've got an infant or a newborn, probably, well, more of an infant toddler, so older baby, sitting in mom's lap watching other kids play. And they kind of look interested, like they want to be involved, but they're not. They're just watching. Um, or you see children who like will go into a nursery and they'll kind of play by themselves. And they won't really play with anyone else. Or they'll sit at home and they'll play by themselves. And it's not really that sophisticated. Maybe they're picking up a block and putting it on. Those little stacker things. I don't know what they're called. Let me find a picture. I know you all know. Oh, here it is. Perfect. You all know what it is. A Fisher Price toy. Rock-a-stack. It's called a rock-a-stack. Who knew? I just call it a donut toy. That's what I called it growing up, or a bagel toy. I guess you could call it too. You all will know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not gonna paste the thing. I get so irritated with Google these days because you do a Google image and then you try to paste something and it doesn't. Ugh. Why do you have to do this to me, Google? Okay, I'm gonna share my Lord. Window capture. Uh, can I not share? Oh, here it is. No, that's not what I want. I have trying to figure out how to do this. Browser source. That's what I want. I want my browser. I want to show my browser. No, it's not what I want to show. What is this? Go away. Okay. I know how. There's a way to do this. I know how to do this, and I now want to. And you're all just like, Darcy, just do it. Like, just show us the thing. This is gonna be so like underwhelming. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. The kid picks up one and puts it on there, and they're just kind of doing it. They're being quiet. They maybe look around a little bit, but they're not. They're not really that involved with other people, and it's not really that interesting. Did you see that? I just realized that I put something else over. So this is what I'm talking about, in case you missed it. Okay. The second type of play, the second step is parallel play. And this is when a child is playing near another child, but they're not playing with them. So you may have two kids sitting next to each other or in this like very close proximity to each other in like a nursery or in like the living room of a house, but they're not playing with each other. They're not interacting with each other. And then we have associative play. My hair looks so raunchy. I don't know if that helped at all, but it was bothering me. Associative play is when you have two children who are playing separate activities, but they're having some kind of conversation with each other. So they may be both, like, one may be playing Barbies, the other may be playing, like, Matchbox cars, but they're talking to each other. The games don't overlap, but they are talking to each other. They're having some kind of interaction. Cooperative play is playing with together but acting out a make-believe play. I'm sorry, playing together and acting out make-believe play. And so this third stage can be either or. It's not that one is better than the other. It just means that the third step is that they are actually interacting verbally with another person. So there's no interaction, limited interaction, and then actual verbal interaction is going on for number three. Um, And so cooperative play will be like two kids playing the same game, and they're playing with the same toys, and they're interacting with each other while they're doing it. Let's move into talking about morality. Now, according to Freud, harsh punishments and withdrawal of love stimulate moral development. So Freud would say if you want someone to be moral, if you want someone to learn ethical behavior, then you should be harsh with them and withdraw your love if they're bad. The reality is, though, is that harsh punishments and withdrawal of love rarely get the outcome that we want. And children who have very harsh parents tend to violate moral standards and feel little guilt about doing it. On the other hand, if you have a warm parent who uses a very warm discipline style, they feel guilt after violating moral standards. And it's because early on we want to please our parents. And if our parents love us and we know that they love us and we feel secure in our relationship with them, we want to please them. We want to do well. But if our parents are harsh with us, we don't feel that they love us, and we're afraid of them. We don't feel comforted by them. And so that's why it's important to use more warm disciplinary styles. Inductive discipline is was developed later within the psychoanalytic theory, sort of rejecting this Freudian idea that we need to be harsh. And inductive discipline is pointing out the impact of wrong actions on others. So this is actually very cognitively based when it comes to morality, because it involves having the child think about how their wrong actions are affecting themselves and affecting other people. Thinking about the social learning theory, the social learning theory focuses on modeling. And what it proposes is that children learn moral behaviors through modeling social behaviors. And the experiment that was done to really bring us to this case is actually a really interesting one. It's the Bobo doll experiment, and the Bobo doll, a Bobo doll is a clown doll, and let me find a picture, and I promise it'll be much more efficient and less uh, awkward as the last time I tried to find a picture. Bobo doll. Oh, there's a GIF. Oh, we're totally GIFing this mug. Oh, I love kids. Kids are fun, you know? Where's this GIF? I feel like I was lied to when I was told there would be a gift. So Albert Bandura did this experiment with a Bobo doll, and And the Bobo doll is a clown doll. It's blown up and it's got a weight in the bottom. So when you hit it, it doesn't move anywhere. It just goes it just goes back and forth like this. And so, oh, this is perfect. So this GIF right here that I'm about to um, put into this slide, theoretically, um, was okay. I said this wasn't going to be awkward, and I've made it awkward already, and I feel bad about it. Oh, cool. So what he did is he had people go into had children watch through a two-way glass, an adult play with his Bobo doll. And the adults who were harsh to the Bobo doll, uh, when 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 adults were harsh to the Bobo doll, the child who watched it would go in and play with the Bobo doll and be harsh with it, would be equally abusive to it. When the person was gentle with the Bobo doll, those children would be gentle with the Bobo doll. And so what Bandura concluded was that someone being when we watch someone being violent with the Bobo doll, or when we observe prosocial behaviors, we model prosocial behaviors, and when we um, observe antisocial behaviors, we are antisocial, or we do antisocial behaviors. So there's the adult is interacting with the Bobo doll, and they're being really harsh and violent with it. And then they had the kids come in and had the kids play with it, and the kids would do the exact same thing. Let me see if I can find a GIF of the kid doing it. No, just the research assistant. It's kind of funny though watching like this research assistant like in a skirt like try to beat this thing up. So my advisor, who used to teach this class, she has a Bobo doll, and normally what would happen is I bring the Bobo doll into class and I play with it. Um, obviously, I can't. Uh, I can't right now because she has already moved to Alabama. Um, but so I'm gonna get you all. I found one of the kid. Oh, this is awful. See, I love psychology because psychology is full uh, of people, of psychologists making people do these awful things to demonstrate just how awful human beings are. I just love it. See, look at this kid. He's got a hammer. Like, where did he go? Where did the kid go? Oh, I didn't set select loop. Okay, so he's got a hammer and he's hitting the Bobo doll and he's just being awful to it. And he's modeling this antisocial behavior that he observed. And so Bandura proposes that when it comes to modeling behaviors, factors that contribute to us modeling behaviors include having a warm and responsive relationship with someone. So people who we trust, who are kind to us, people who are competent and in power. So we view people who we see as being powerful and who we perceive to being like in the know about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate for us to do. Um, and then consistency. Consistency is really important. If you've got someone who's not consistently moral, then it's going to communicate the idea that it's okay for us not to be moral, that we can just kind of do whatever we want. And he also said that positive discipline is key to individuals developing a good sense of morality. And what I mean by positive discipline is that the discipline that we use should model pro-social behavior. And a lot of times what we use in the United States for discipline for children is spanking. However, spanking is not a positive discipline, nor is it effective. Um, it models aggressive reactions to displeasure. So it communicates this idea that it's okay to be aggressive. It's okay to hit people who upset us, who frustrate us. It fosters a constant state of threat. So if you're being hit for being bad, you're going to feel threatened all the time, and you're going to feel threatened by the person who spanks you. It reduces our capacity for empathy because it focuses all of our emotional energy when we're disciplined on the fact that we feel violated and we feel hurt instead of focusing on how our behavior hurts somebody else. Over time, spanking, especially harsh spanking, reduces positive parent-child relationships. So our relationships with our caregivers, as caregivers, our relationships with our children can be affected if we spank. And it doesn't lead, unfortunately, to lasting changes in behavior. It only has a temporary effect. It reduces the behavior in the moment, but it doesn't have a long-term effect. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to push some kind of liberal agenda. I'm saying this as the person who spent part of undergrad researching conduct disorders and how they can be treated. And what has been found over and over again very strongly, without any shadow of a doubt, is that spanking is not effective. Timeouts, effective, consistent timeouts are actually the most effective form of discipline that there is. Effective discipline shows consistency. You have to discipline the same way every time for the same offense at the same level. So if somebody hits another child, you have to discipline them the same way the next time that they discipline a child. If you discipline them in a less strong way, so like if you put them on a 5-minute timeout the first time, but only put them on a 1-minute timeout the second time, they're not going to feel consistency. They're going to be like, I can get away with anything. And that's why timeout fails for so many parents, because they're not consistent about how they do timeout. So you have to show consistency. And in parent-child interaction therapy, I worked in a lab in undergrad that researched parent-child interaction therapy as a method to treat conduct disorder. What we found is that if you have timeouts that last the same amount of time every time, and the child cannot get off timeout until they're quiet for at least the last, I think, 30 seconds of that timeout. If they aren't quiet, then they have to stay in timeout until they are quiet for 30 seconds. And what we found is that over time, children's conduct issues go away because they have a warm relationship with a caregiver. So that's also part of it, is you have to develop a warm relationship with the child. They have a warm relationship. The parent is being consistent. They trust, because they have that warm relationship, they trust the parent when they put them in timeout. And over time, they stop doing the bad behavior. And there's a consistent improvement in behavior and consistent reduction of negative behaviors over time as a result. The other thing that PCIT does that is a part of effective discipline is there is an explanation of why the behavior is harmful. So in other words, you are going on timeout because I told you to do this and you did not do this. And then um, you didn't do this, and because you didn't do this, you could have gotten hurt. And then at the end of timeout, the child should be made to do the thing that they were told not to do. Or to do the thing the parent told them to do. So if the parent says pick up your toys, they don't. You put them on a timeout and they come out, then they have to pick up their toys. So they get punished, and then they still have to do the thing that they got in trouble for. So it's that is what effective discipline looks like. And PCIT is really, really cool. I think the longest timeout on record's been 7 hours. Um, because it doesn't stop. The timeout doesn't stop until all the criteria have been met. You know what? That child never misbehaved again, though, because once you've been on timeout for 7 hours and you finally are broken down, and it's not abusive. I mean, the child's safety is being monitored the entire time, but it's safer than spanking, because spanking has such negative impact on a person's psychosocial development. Um, yeah, so like if you were to put someone in timeout using the PCIT method, just to go through it again, like I have a warm relationship with this child. I tell the child, okay, it's time for you to pick up your toys, and they don't pick up their toys. The first time you would say, you know, Johnny, I told you to pick up your toys. If you don't pick up your toys, you're going to have to go on a timeout. If Johnny still doesn't do it, then you say, Johnny, you're going on a timeout because you did not pick up your toys. And you put Johnny in timeout, and there should be a chair or like a little carpet square or something that signifies the timeout area. And they have to stay on the chair or on the carpet square. If they don't, then you have to pick them up and put them back on it. And then you just sit there. I can't remember how much, I think I want to say it's 7 minutes maybe, that they have to sit on a timeout chair. And then they have to be quiet and on the chair for the last 30 seconds. And then once it's up, then you would say, Johnny, you need to go pick up your toys. And if Johnny does it, then you reward them profusely for it. Thank you so much for picking up your toys. I'm very proud of you for being responsible. Um, and that's when you would have that message of why the behavior was harmful. You know, thank you for picking up the toys. You're helping mommy out by keeping the house clean so that you don't get hurt. You wouldn't say, you did a bad thing because I need you to pick the toys up when I tell them. The explanation itself is going to be very positive. Um, I, I told you, thank you for eating your vegetables. Eating your vegetables will help you to become good and strong. And so that they start to internalize this message and they associate the message with positive things instead of with being punished. I just love kids, and it's hard for me to watch children get disciplined in effective ways that you know aren't going to help them at all. Um, so I'm very, very passionate about that. The last theory that I want to cover when it comes to moral development is the cognitive-developmental theory. And the cognitive developmental theory proposes that children are active thinkers about social rules. In other words, a kid isn't like this mellow yellow bottle from yesterday. They're not some, ooh, there's still some mellow yellow in there. They're not these vessels that we fill up with morality that they just take without thinking. Children are actively taking in information and they're evaluating it. They're coming up with explanations in their mind as to why certain things exist the way that they do. And children in early childhood can classify social rules, and they can classify them in three different ways. The first way is moral imperatives, and these are universal rules which protect rights and welfare of all people. So an example of a moral imperative is do not murder. That affects and protects every single person. A social convention is another classification, and these are rules we agree upon which are polite but not unbendable. So, table manners. For example, in Germany and in a lot of European countries, it is rude to eat with your hands. And technically in the United States, it is in some circles very rude to eat with your hands. But it doesn't matter. We're not gonna like throw someone in prison if they pick up a piece of pizza and eat it with their hands. I mean, who is going to sit there and cut up their pizza with a knife and fork? Well, I have several friends from Europe who do. I don't. I pick it up and eat it with my hands, and I'm rude and I don't care because it's more fun to eat that way. I actually eat sushi with my hands, which is probably insulting to Japanese people, but I enjoy sushi. Sushi feels amazing. Like, to me, eating sushi, the entire experience is enhanced by eating it with your hands, but that's just me. And then personal choice is the last categorization. These are rules which are determined by the individual. So the friends that we have, the activities that we have. So for example, in my classification of social rules, a moral imperative for me is that people should be free to make decisions for their own life, as long as those rules or those decisions do not impede another person's ability to make decisions for their own life. So you want to have a tattoo? Have a tattoo. I'm not gonna put any kind of value on that. It doesn't affect me. If you're gonna force me to wear a tattoo though, that's where we're gonna have a problem because I don't want a tattoo. I think it would hurt. Um, you want to have a religion, that's fine. Have a religion. But don't tell me that I have to have it too. Um, Social convention for me would be that when you have a guest in your home, you should take care of their every need. Um, and that's the southern lady in me. When I'm hosting something, if somebody ever goes without something that they want, if their glass is ever empty, their plate is ever empty, they don't know where the bathroom is, I have failed as a hostess. That is a social convention for me. My job for guests in my house, or guests of me in any situation, is to make sure that they are comfortable. That's a social convention, though. That's not a moral imperative. An unbendable rule. For example, if some person comes into my house and is incredibly rude, I'm not going to go out of my way to make them feel comfortable. In fact, I'm going to try to figure out a way to get them out of my house. A personal choice, though, for me would be like where I go to church. So I am religious. My religion is very important to me, but it's not a rule and it's not a convention. I can go to the Episcopal Church today, or you know a Lutheran church tomorrow. It's not like a hard and fast rule for me. It's just this is where I'm comfortable right now, and this is what works for me. um, Preschoolers, according to the cognitive developmental theory, are more rigid in interpreting morality. So while we all have these three categories are universal across development, when it comes to preschoolers, they're much more rigid. So they're much more black and white. They see things in either right or wrong. There's no middle ground. So, for example, is murder um, right or wrong? Well, to a preschooler, yes, murder, there's a right or wrong answer to that. Murder is always wrong. Um, what about if you are in a situation where there's a person who intends to kill a lot of people, and the only way that you can save all of those people is to kill that person? Is that wrong? Well, as adults, we know that there's a gray area there, that murder isn't wrong, that killing isn't wrong when we are we are removing a threat to a large number of people. Um, when we are protecting another person's right to um, life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, we as a society have determined that that is not wrong. And so there's a gray area there. But for a preschooler, they would say, no, that's wrong. You should never kill anyone. Um, and all of us have had to make decisions like that before. I remember one time um, I was driving and an animal ran out in front of me, and I had a decision to make. I could either swerve to miss the animal, and the options of swerving would be to swerve into incoming traffic, or to go up on a sidewalk in front of a school where there were kids walking, or hitting the animal that had run out in front of me. Those were my three options. And I decided to run over the animal because I had to make the decision where I was not hurting the child that was in my car, first of all, or the children walking on the sidewalk. I had to make a decision with the least amount of damage. I mean, I did try to stop, but the animal ran right out in front of me, and I had to make a split-second decision just like that. Um, Preschooler would see that as wrong. As an adult, though, we can see that there's a gray area, and there are other decisions that have to go into that. Over time, though, this sort of rigid black and white morality tends to dissipate as we interact with more people. So social interactions are necessary for children to actively make sense of moral decisions and moral dilemmas. The more we interact with other people, the more we're able to see different perspectives. And that's why diverse opinions are so important, because we are limited by our own viewpoint, our own experience. When we have interactions with multiple people, with different kinds of people, with different kinds of experiences, we're able to have a much more informed experience. Aggression is the opposite of morality, and I'm kind of going off of the sort of current social climate and calling it the alt morality. Um, aggression is antisocial behavior. So if morality is pro-social behavior, aggression is antisocial behavior. And there are two types of aggressive behavior. The first is proactive aggression, and this is goal-oriented aggression. We are doing something in order to get something that we want. The other is reactive aggression, and that is an angry or defensive response to something. An example of proactive aggression would be, I want to get through the grocery store and get home and watch the newest season of Orange is the New Black. So my proactive aggression is I'm going to cut people off on the freeway. I'm going to like cut someone off in the parking lot to get a good parking space. I'm going to cut people off in the supermarket. I'm going to like run and like squeak in front of someone at the shop out the checkout line before they do. Like they're literally about to turn in and I get in before them, and it's clearly like I'm clearly being a jerk, but I don't care. That's proactive aggression. Reactive aggression would be if I'm driving on the freeway and somebody cuts me off. I honk at them, I yell at them, I shake my fist. I'm being aggressive, but it's in anger and it's in defense of something. Um, there are three forms of aggression that could fall into these types. The first is physical aggression, and this is hurting others through physical injury of some kind: hitting, kicking, punching, biting. Verbal aggression, and really verbal and relational are the same, or can be the same. But verbal is hurting others through hostile words or threats. Or calling someone, the B word, or or yelling at someone and just giving them a really harsh verbal dressing down is a type of verbal aggression. And then relational aggression is hurting other people's peer relationships. So smearing their name, spreading lies or rumors about them. That's an example of relational aggression. There are multiple influences to aggression and aggressive behavior and antisocial behavior. The most common is aggressive or violent home environments. So if you are living in an environment as a small child where you're constantly having aggression against yourself and there's violence all around you, you're going to be more aggressive and more violent with other people. You're going to internalize what you see. You're going to, through social learning, you're going to exhibit that in your own social interactions. And also, aggressive and violent media can have the same effect. If you're constantly being exposed to that, it wires your brain in such a way that you think in an aggressive and violent way. I want to thank you for your attention. Be sure to watch, if you haven't already, the class visitor video. For Monday, please read pages 273 to 283 and do reading number 3. So that will also cover some of that morality stuff that we talked about today, I'm pretty sure. I said this was our question for today last time. I was wrong. It's for next time. Think about what is the one thing you wanted to do that wasn't appropriate for your gender. Again, if you post that to the discussion board as a pre-discussion for class 10, or if you put class 9, that's fine too. I'll give you some points. I forgot how many, but I'll look. I think it's 0.25. Yeah, 0.25 points. And then remember that our movie night is tonight from 5 to 7. Again, if you can't come, if you rent it and then answer the questions, you can still get points. Let me know if you're coming. 2 people have responded already, so I will be here, but I would still appreciate a heads up if you're coming. One thing about tonight, the department, so the movie night's in the psychology department conference room. And so the psychology department's in Menard Hall. The inside door locks at 4:30. I think the outside door stays open. I'm not sure. Um, I will send out on email my cell phone number. So if you get here and the door is locked, text me. I will come at 5 o'clock and let you in. So just wait outside the department at 5 o'clock and I'll let you in. But if you're locked outside the building, then send me a text and I'll come and get you. Um, your quiz will be posted at 12:30. So be sure to take that. It's due Monday at 11:59 p.m. No exceptions. And I will post today before I go home all the information that you need for the midterm exam, which is a week from today. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon. Maybe we'll see you tonight. If not, we'll talk again on Monday.